It's June the 9th, and welcome to Morning Message. In the last few weeks, the temperature on Prince Edward Island has fluctuated. It seems to have been either significantly above normal or expected or below. So it's always seems to be fluctuating back and forth between extremely warm weather or extremely cold weather. And that seems fairly typical. I'm not sure what they mean by what's normal for a particular day. I realize it's averages over a period of time, but it seems to me it's always either slightly above or slightly below or significantly higher or significantly lower. And that's the way it's always been. But thinking about that this week reminded me of my tomato plants when I was growing up. My mother and I had a garden, a vegetable garden in the backyard, and it had grown. It was quite a large garden at one point. In fact, my mother disagrees with me on this point, but I'm pretty sure I counted. We had the usual, carrots and radishes and those sorts of things, but one year we had 86 tomato plants. Couple of rows of cherry tomatoes, and the rest of the garden, except for the carrots and radishes, were tomato plants. I spent Saturday digging and tilling and planting. It was in the springtime, and there was a ice storm after all this planting had taken place, and the north end of Dartmouth looked beautiful. Every branch, every surface covered in about a half inch of ice. And of course, when I got up that morning and looked out the window, I saw how beautiful it was, but my major concern was for the plants and whether or not they would survive. In fact, I was told that tomato plants simply didn't survive that sort of thing. But later in the day, the ice had gone and the sun came out, and it came up to a more seasonable temperature, and in fact those tomato plants were resilient enough to survive that freezing rain. In fact, I would say we had a bumper crop that year. There was a point, I'm sure, when people would have not really enjoyed seeing the Clarks coming to their house, because they almost always had a bag full of tomatoes or tomatoes to give, and we gave them to everybody that summer. But I have to say that my dad also got it into his head one evening to make Chow Chow, a condiment made out of green tomatoes. And so that's what he wanted to do. I must have been out. I didn't know this was happening. So when I got home that night, on the kitchen counter, there were these great big piles of beautiful green tomatoes. And I was angry. I was really frustrated because in the dark, Dad went picking, and all he could find with his little flashlight were the big, perfect tomatoes, the ones you'd want to ripen. It was the ugly little ones that you chopped up into make Chow Chow. At least that's what I thought. And he made gallons and gallons and gallons of this stuff. And I'm sure just as people had been disappointed to see us bringing fresh tomatoes or tomatoes, they were equally shy about receiving our Chow Chow. It was delicious, by the way. It was really good Chow Chow. It went really well on hamburgers and with roast beef and that sort of thing. And I'm sure there's still unopened jars of Chow Chow populating the pantries of the north end of Dartmouth, without a doubt. Anyway, the reason I remember that story today is partly because the temperature has been fluctuating here in Prince Edward Island, as it does all over the place, really, but also as a reminder of resilience. We are a resilient people, and something like pandemic is really, really challenging. But I think we're capable of meeting this challenge. We are resilient, and we have lots of tools at our hand to help us through this. Of course, we have things like prayer and meditation, studying scripture. Those sorts of things are tremendously helpful. But we also have telephones and Zoom and FaceTime and things like that that we can do to reach out to friends, families, neighbors. And I encourage you to do that. It's all those things that builds resilience in us to help us through times like this. And this is indeed what I think God would have us do. It is in our nature as Christian people to reach out to others and see what we can do to help, and also to reach out to others when we need a help ourselves. And so I encourage you to make the most of the resilience that you have, and to know that through it all, God remains faithful and is with you and blesses you. Amen.